Go. Good evening, everyone.
It's Friday, 8 p.m.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Debs.
Welcome to Codes of the Unknown. But before we do go any further, I have had to put the chat on go slow so that we don't miss any. Messages.
Questions.
So, there you go, Deb. Over to you.
Don't be afraid.
Ooh.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody. And please let's have a big welcome for Caz Clarke. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, tonight's subject is the Pentyrch UFO Incident. So, if you want to start from the beginning, start from what very first happened that alerted you to something not quite right.
Okay. Well, I noticed a very small grey twin propeller plane flying very low over my village on the 23rd of February 2016. It was a beautiful day. The sky was clear. And I just remembered thinking, if that plane goes any slower, it's going to fall out of the sky. Yeah. But we have military aircraft that pass through, so I didn't really pay it any mind. It was the next day when David, one of my neighbours, came out of his house and he was cursing, and I won't repeat what he said, but this small aircraft had kept awake all night.
Yeah.
And when someone pointed something out to you like a sound, that's all you tend to hear. And so Wednesday night, that was all I could hear. And you kind of anticipate when it's going to come back. And every 15 minutes, this small propeller plane was flying over my house. We're going into Thursday now. It was still clear. And you could practically see the pilot was so low. And it wasn't long before another plane, almost identical to the first, turned up to take place, and the first plane would leave. Now, I know what these aircraft are now because of the in-depth investigation that Gary Jones has completed. And so I know that one of the aircraft was a Beechcraft aircraft, tail number ZZ418. And that's a reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft that's part of the iStar project. And I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Well, Thursday, we watched these aircraft, and one would fly for approximately 8 hours, and then another one would come and take its place. ZG996. It was an Army Corps surveillance and reconnaissance plane. And we decided that between us, if they were still there later, we'd go out and watch with them, because we'd contacted the Ministry of Defence and didn't get any answers. We'd contacted the mainstream media, and they didn't know anything either. There were no exercises listed for these aircraft, and no NOTAMs had been issued for those aircraft to this date. And David, who is a bit of a plane spotter, to be honest with you, thought that perhaps they were watching for Russian planes. And I know that sounds outrageous, but it was only the week before, on 18th of February, that our aircraft, or our Air Force, had turned away 2 Russian Tu-160 bombers in airspace. It was quite clear that they were watching for something, but we never expected in a million years what we were about to see. That night, David came to my house. Donna, one of my other neighbours, who we'd been discussing it with, also came to my house. And we stood in my back garden. We'd lit the fire pit, and we were watching this small grey twin-propeller plane, by this time flying figure 8 patterns over the top of my house. And it got to about 2 a.m. I was freezing cold. Donna was in and out randomly, and time it took her a little bit longer to come back out. I think the situation had really started to scare her a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was just about to go back in, and I'd said to David, look, nothing's happening. I'm freezing cold. I want to go. I just got to my back door of the house. I heard an enormous plane coming. In fact, it sounded like a missile. And I ran back to the end of my garden and looked up to see this huge plane go over the top of us. I had no clue at that point what it was, but as it banked around to the left-hand side, so you could see the outline of this mushroom-shaped object on its back. And David explained that free sentry plane, an AWACS plane.
Yeah.
And that meant nothing to me, but because this plane had turned up, I decided I'd stay a little longer and watch.
Yeah.
And it started to circle, not circles. This aircraft took several minutes to go around just once. And David said, well, perhaps it's taxiing for the airport. The only airport large enough to accommodate a plane of that size is Cardiff International Airport, which is a civilian airport where you would expect to see an aircraft of that type. 7 times the plane went around. And on the 7th time it went around, one red light was visible high above the trees behind my house. So I'd called for Donna, gone into the house to make hot drinks, hot chocolates actually, and didn't get an answer. In fact, I called twice and still didn't get an answer. And I called for David to follow me. And we jumped over the small wire fence and ran to the 5-bar gate that overlooks the farmland behind my house, because we're in quite an elevated position, to get an unobstructed view of what was going on. And this one red light turned into 3 red lights in a triangle formation, but coming in sideways. And the leading 6 lights on its underside were the closest to us, were more visible than the rest. But as it came in, so the whole thing became visible. And it was turning very slowly anti-clockwise. And as it did so, it came down in the upright position and lined itself up above the trees that border the next field across. And once it was in the upright position, it fired this really bright green object out of the top. I don't know what shape it was. It was too bright, brighter than the moon. We had nearly a full moon. Brighter than the moonlight. It was like a bright green star, and actually hurt my eyes to look at it. But it skipped across and above the trees to my left-hand side and just rocked gently backwards and forwards. It didn't go anywhere. I just stayed there watching. Meanwhile, the pyramid is still turning very slowly anti-clockwise, but tilted to the right-hand side slightly. Yeah. And I stood on the 5-bar gate to get a better look through the bare trees, because this is winter. Yeah. And I said, David, it's landing. It was coming down, when in actual fact, the ground there rises because that's the foot of the Garth Mountain. And as it hit the ground, the whole thing lit up really brightly. And even then, the right-hand string of lights were brighter than the rest. It described like a hand of lightning. But it wasn't lightning. It wasn't thin lightning like we have here. It was thick, like fire-coloured fingers that reached out to stop itself from touching the ground. And the whole thing lit up really brightly. And around the brightest lights, you could see the texture of the craft. I described it like a rock face, as if it was made of stone. But I don't know because I didn't touch it, because all my critics have said, I don't know that. And that's true, I don't. But that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Right.
Whilst I was looking at the bottom, this is all happening about 200 meters away from us. David was looking at the top. And such was the size of it from 200 yards or 200 meters away. Whilst I was looking at the bottom, you couldn't see the top in your peripheral vision. And David said he saw 15 or 20 described as orbs come out at the top of this pyramid that seemed to be dancing and mingling with each other as if they were protecting the main craft.
Right.
I don't know why I was fixated on the bottom of it touching the ground. I was.
Yeah.
And I heard two planes coming, two, I now know to be two C-17s,
Yeah.
flying wingtip to wingtip. And I looked up, I'm still standing on the gate just to watch these planes go over the top of me because they were so low. I could see they had planes on each wing. They were enormous aircraft, and they were flying towards where the pyramid was. And when I looked back, I couldn't see the pyramid anymore. That's not to say that it wasn't there. I just couldn't see it. The green object was still there, the bright green object. Two C-130 aircraft, Hercules aircraft, came from my left-hand side.
Yeah.
They did came in, gunships came in behind the two C-17s. And so you had two C-130s out wide and two C-17s in close. Flight, and between them, they took up the entire visible airspace. And this green object, this green star-shaped object, not shaped, I don't know, shot across the sky in a perfectly straight line, extremely fast, and stopped in front of 4 aircraft and fired 3 really bright strobes at these aircraft, and then appeared to get excited. And what I mean by that was it started bouncing and skipping rather than flying in a straight line. I described like Tigger off Winnie the Pooh, you know, bouncing and skipping and bouncing. It was deliberately drawing those aircraft away from where the pyramid was and the load that it had jettisoned.
Yeah.
I watched that group until I couldn't see it anymore. I could see all of the outline of all of the 4 aircraft, and they were all bathed in this green light with this green object skipping away, and in front you could see the outline of all the engines and the fuselage of these 4 aircraft. And it looked like a scene out of a movie, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
After that had gone on site, the E3 Sentry was still above us. This E3 Sentry was from NATO. We have its tail number. NATO were involved. And this was now flying in an oval flight pattern above where the pyramid was. We were approached by 2 barrel-shaped objects, about the size of a small car, maybe 10 feet high and 5 to 6 feet wide, completely silent. They were both tail-light red in colour. One stopped about 20 feet away from me and maybe 30 feet up, if that, just above the hedge. And I stared at it just for a few seconds because I wanted the details.
Yeah.
I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I could see all the insides moving. I tried like white noise on a TV screen, but it wasn't that. It was as if it was mixing in on itself, you know? And then I looked to see what the second one was, and that hadn't. And by then, that was right above the oak tree, right above us. And the only thing I could think to do was to wave. With all the military activity that was going on that night, I didn't want us to appear to be hostile. And the one above us, each colour, from tail light red to traffic light green, and I felt it scan me.
Yeah.
There was nothing visible that I could see. It was just a feeling. Like someone had reached in and took the fear away from me.
Yeah.
Like it was a sense of euphoria almost. Elation almost.
Yeah. It's almost like it changing from red to green was like a signal that it was okay. You know, because you'd sort of waved to it and it changed colour. It was almost like, all right, okay, you know,
not hostile.
Yeah.
Initially, had gone running into the field towards the pyramid, and I called him back because of the military activity. If they weren't there, I'd probably been by his side.
Yeah.
But I couldn't think of anything worse than approaching at speed and in the dark towards something when the military had set an ambush for it.
Yeah.
These things were not hostile. They did not attack the military. They did not attack us.
No.
They ran for their lives and they tried to hide. That does not sound hostile to me. They didn't hurt us at all. They both went off in different directions. The green barrel went off above the rooftops to my right-hand side, and the red barrel that had remained sentry the whole time, like it was guarding the other one, if you like, moved off to my left-hand side and low across the fields. And I watched that one until I couldn't see it anymore. And that's not to say that it disappeared or it could have switched its light off, or genuinely, I just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
After that, the E3 was still above us, and David and I walked down the field because he said he saw 15 or 20 of these objects. So we went down to see if we could see any more. And the E3 sentry followed us. And what I mean by that is it was flying in this oval flight pattern that was continuous and remained the same. And when we moved, that oval flight pattern moved with us. And when we came back, that oval flight pattern came back with us, and it actually followed us home, followed me home.
Wow.
And, you know, you'd think that David and I have been talking incessantly about this, but actually David was almost catatonic.
Yeah.
Sitting in the armchair next to my window, just staring into space like, did that really just happen?
Yeah.
It was a few minutes after that when David went on. Yeah. That we heard the enormous explosion. And this isn't a small bang or a fake incendiary device, as the Minister of Defence have told us it was.
Yeah.
It's fake munitions do not have any kinetic energy at all.
No.
Whatever this explosion was, registered on the Richter scale, 40 miles away in Monmouth, shook people's homes and woke people up, shook patients awake in their beds in the hospital. This was a huge explosion, so big that it set the car alarms off in the neighbouring villages, not just in Llantrisant.
Yeah.
Wow.
The next morning, or I should say the same morning, just a few hours later, David came to my house hammering on my front door. I think it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Because Wales Online had put a cover story out to say that how military helicopters kept parts of South Wales awake in this so-called training exercise. Well, I didn't know you weren't supposed to talk about UFOs. I've always said I had no interest in UFOs. I missed the idea that perhaps they were real, but it wasn't part of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I've been attacked because I watched the Disclosure Project back in 2001, I think it was, along with several million other people. But it never compelled me to get in the UFO group. You know, I've watched ET Encounters of the Third Kind too, but again, it didn't make UFOs an interest of mine, and I certainly didn't expect it. Now I know they've lied to us.
Yeah.
So I posted a comment on Wales to say I can categorically assure you that was no exercise.
Yeah.
What I saw last night will stay with me for the rest of my life, and what they were chasing were not planes, and that I would take a lie detector for anyone, anywhere, and I have. At my expense, and they're not cheap.
No, they're not.
Passed. Anyway, it was through all the other comments from other people that talked about the explosions in Llantrisant, how the first was an air explosion, and how the second sounded like something on the ground.
Right.
But the Ministry of Defence's explanation that this was a simulated munition is impossible because you can't place a simulation in the air.
No.
There was a tremendous amount of smoke that was falling from the air. And a member of staff at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital has told us that there was so much smoke that when they were outside it resembled a foggy night, that the smoke was so dense that it came through the windows and through the vents and filled the corridors with smoke and had a disgusting sulfur-like smell to it. The military actually performed a meticulous metal search on Llantrisant Common, where the air explosion occurred, I believe, or we believe, to pick up a missile they fired that night. And it was a missile. Missile engines are very different to jet engines. And, you know, if you ever watch the shuttle take off, you get that big plume of smoke because it's a missile engine. And the huge explosion. We also have a witness to gunfire that night. We have a new witness that's come forward from Pontyclun that saw the woods light up that night with the sound of the second explosion. And there were Chinook helicopters flying into Smilog Woods, taking something from Smilog Woods and taking it back to St. Athan, being escorted by Apache gunships. Now, the third one, because there were three flying in a triangle formation, They were flying from our left to our right on an interception course with that first green object that went. Forced to do an emergency landing at Cardiff International Airport. This was no small thing. This was a full-scale emergency. The official explanation was it was a generator failure. The witnesses have told us that it landed with its cockpit on fire. That is not a generator failure. This is a full-scale emergency at Cardiff International Airport where you wouldn't expect to find an Apache helicopter.
Exactly.
We believe that Apache was fitted with brimstone missiles. It was caught in its own kinetic wave, which is why it had to do the emergency landing. And they were actually officially fitted with the brimstone in June of 2016. So I think they learned some valuable lessons that night. But what was so important, that Chinook helicopters had to be escorted by 2 of our best gunships on sorties to and from Smilog Woods. No one had permission to close the roads. No one had permission to be in Smilog Woods. And we've had that from National Wales via Freedom of Information requests. And yet that's exactly what they did. We went up to Llantrisant Common where we saw all the old squad had been on the common for years and had been neatly picked up and stacked along the roadside. And I couldn't help thinking the first scrap man that comes along today is going to have his job done and dusted in one trip. And we asked the Ministry of Defence why they conducted a meticulous metal search, and we were told Section 26, not in the public interest. We believe they picked up the missile they fired that night. I stopped and spoke to 2 people walking their dog there, who told me that the second explosion had come from Smilog Woods. And because I wasn't from the area, I didn't know where Smilog Woods was located. And I felt very stupid when they pointed to an enormous wooded hill that rises behind the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And when you look at the woods from the common side, it looks like a giant W, but the right-hand valley is lower than the left-hand valley. And if, as I believe, the green object had been fired upon and was losing altitude, you'd want to make that right-hand valley to clear it. But unfortunately, on the other side, there's another hill that is in front of them. Because we knew the trajectory of the green object, we decided we would go to Smilog Woods and search to see if we could find. I was looking for an impact crater, to be honest. But it wasn't long before we found a debris trail. And initially, the branches were quite small. There are no branches on the lower parts of the trees. There are no branches on the lower parts of the trees, and really sort of the top 12 or 15 feet of the tree has actually got any green on it at all. And this is like this through the forest. And 60-foot trees had been snapped in half, mid-trunk. That is an impossibility in nature unless we have a hurricane or a tornado, and there weren't any. And as you got further into the woods, so the branches became bigger. Literally, the trunks were in half, and these trees were distended, like they tried to explode from the inside out. We followed the debris trail through to its end, and we found an impact area where all the trees had been snapped off at the same height, where there were scuff marks and injuries to the surrounding trees, where wood, living wood, went outwards towards you. I don't know if you've ever run a blade along a ribbon and saw that ribbon curl up. Well, that's exactly what this would have done, as if something very big and very heavy had been dragged up against these trees. And around were all these white burn marks, not black burn marks. And again, the same pungent sulfur smell. It was a cross between fireworks and sulfur still in the air. And it was snowing, not only at the crash site, but also what we call the near landing field, where the pyramid had emerged, because that thing didn't come down from outer space. That came through the space. You know, people have said to me, well, maybe it was cloaked. Well, if it was cloaked, why would the military have to watch and wait for it for 3 days and 3 nights? They'd have been able to see it. If it was cloaked, why did the military send a cleanup crew here afterwards and then lie about their identity? And that's exactly what happened. They came dressed as civilians, wanting to go outdoors and go, well, we'll have 4 of those tents and 4 of those tents, you know, and 2 of those. They 2 different stories. Firstly, that they were a fracking survey team, and then that they were Vodafone doing field research. I wanted to know. I didn't even know they were there initially. It was only a local Pentyrch hub that we learned that they were there at all.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine had come over, and we gone over to the gate. And as we approached the gate, so we saw 2 soldiers coming towards us. They were dressed in digital camouflage, identically. They had the same weapon, automatic rifle, that did not have a yellow cap in the end of it, implying they were carrying blanks. These guns were brand new, like they'd been stripped and oiled that morning. There is no way those guns had ever been dragged around, exercised anywhere. This was someone's pride. They told us that they were doing a military exercise in case of an emergency situation, should we see anything funny going on in the fields. They were searching the field where the pyramid came in, wearing white forensic suits and those blue cover shoes things on their feet. And when anyone would walk past, they would all stop what they were doing, stand up and stare at you until you were out of sight. We'd gone into the campsite, and I initially started to walk around the field. And then I said to Steve, who was with me, oh, sod this, you know, I want to cut across, I want to get closer. As we cut across the field, so a big dog has come out of one of the tents and charged towards us. I now know to be some kind of pit bull type breed. It started to circle us, and I shouted to the 2 men that I could see in camp. One was seated and one was standing. Put your dog on a lead. The farmer's got a shotgun. He's not afraid to unit. This is nearly lambing season.
Yeah.
And I had an answer. What? Which I in? You know, I wanted to get closer, so I walked at literally the middle of their camp, and I took photographs as I did so. In fact, if it weren't for the photographs that we have, there would be no evidence those people were ever there.
Yeah.
I asked them what they were doing. They replied with, who was I? And I said, well, I'm a local resident. And again, they were Vodafone doing field research. So within 10 minutes, we told 2 different stories. They're doing a military exercise in case of an emergency situation, or they're Vodafone. Well, not content with that. I mean, I'd walked back, and Donna's come out to ask who these people were, and I told her, so she's gone out with my dog again. This time she's gone further down the trail. She took photographs of people operating some form of equipment covertly in the fields there. They had 3 of these laptop-type devices that were not laptops. They had those little mini satellite dishes. And I spoke to some military personnel. It was quite clear that they were triangulating something. I believe it was a satellite, because they're using the satellites to monitor for this frequency to know when these craft are going to appear. That's a fact.
Yeah.
We are when Gary got involved with the investigation, I asked him to contact Cardiff City Council to see if there'd been any planning changes for the land there. Any privately owned company, including Vodafone, would have to apply for planning permission to have a campsite there.
Yeah.
No planning permission has ever been granted. So once we closed the door on the Ministry of Defence for that one, we then asked the Ministry of Defence, who were these people in the fields? And they said that they held in the request. So asked them what they were doing, and they named Section 26 not in the public interest. The only people that can hide behind Section 26 are the military, and that answered our first question.
Yeah.
We asked them why it was that they lied their identity, and initially they skirted over the question, so we had to ask a second time on another Freedom of Information request, why did they lie about their identity if they were doing a military exercise? Section 26, not in the public interest. They did not say, they didn't lie, which means it was a covert operation.
Yeah.
If it was covert, it was real. And we have never had people camp in the fields before or since. What was so important that they had to send a covert military operation to the fields of Pentyrch, where a huge pyramid craft had appeared just a few days before. any questions.
It's just mad. Rick's asking, has Caz experienced any strange phenomena since then?
Yes. Yes, indeed. I never watched before because it wasn't an interest of mine. But since, I've noticed our other craft, not as majestic as what happened that night, but we do have other craft in this area. In fact, on the 11th of June last year, I invited all the radio hosts and bloggers that had helped me over the last 5 years to get this information out to the people. And I invited them to my home, included Paranormal Scholar and Paranormal Now and the Swansea group, along with others, all professionals in their way. And my wish was that we would have a low UFO that night, and that no one would film it. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, we had about 5 or 6 that night, but one came in very low behind my house, just above the row of trees. And then within the blink of an eye was gone. But everyone was pointing at it and cheering and clapping. Everyone saw it, but nobody filmed it. I think your cognitive function just ceases when you see something like that. You know,
I think it is. They have some sort of effect.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, I said I think they have some sort of effect that kind of like stuns you. You're looking at it, but you're not able to do anything because you're just mesmerised by what you're looking at.
Right. That was the situation with the pyramid. And it was only when the barrels were there that I even thought about filming them. And I took my phone out of my pocket and tried to switch it on, and absolutely nothing. And I know my phone was charged before I went out there. And we thought one of two things. It was possibly the IFRI Sentry that has that capability, or the extremely high EMF. And I didn't know about EMF at the time. And it has, cut people's engines off in the, and interfered with other electronic equipment. Drained our phones. And David's phone is completely fried. Fried. It won't even switch on.
Wow.
It's just
mad. It's mind blowing completely.
Nicknames
changed everything.
Has Caz made any new developments? And thanks, Caz, for sharing your story and making it public. So basically, have you had any new developments?
We have. As I say, we've had a witness come forward from Pontyclean that saw the impact, that actually saw the object go into Smilog Woods and the whole woods lit up.
Wow.
We are making contact with that person now. We also know that there are videos, plural, and the person that has these videos has still not come to terms with what he witnessed that night. He's not a ufologist. He doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. And he has these videos. He was working nights in Tristant and saw it all unfold from the other end. So we are at present trying to contact this witness to get those videos. I know that photographs exist that have been authenticated, but I've been excluded from using them. And the person that has them has also seen a video, again, of the incident that night because his pyramid flew over his house. So that is in the video.
Right.
And again, that's been... I mean, these things can blow the lid clean off this case, but the people that have them have such a dislike for me that they won't release the information. This is a UFO group that's supposed to want disclosure. And it is quite shocking and disgusting that someone in this field doesn't want disclosure.
Definitely.
I think it's outrageous.
It's just not right.
No.
Should all be working to the same cause.
And I didn't realise so many people would be working against me when Gary and I have tried so hard to get disclosure on this. We had a meeting with some of the Senedd MPs, and I had copies of the photographs, but I wasn't allowed to have the originals. Now, they knew that we were having the meetings with the Senedd, and Senedd MPs had asked for the original photographs to be sent via email for authentication. And basically this person, who you're aware of, said no. and stopped us going to the Senate, the Welsh Senate, answers on this case, an investigation into this case. So our only option now is to start a petition to get the Ministry of Defence to release the footage from every single aircraft involved that night, if nothing happened. Let's all do nothing, and we can give their tail numbers and their course lines for that night. You know, people will argue this was Exercise Chameleon. Exercise Chameleon was in Durham, 310 miles away from here, for the week before this event. There was no mention of South Wales, no mention of low-level flying, especially in the early hours of the morning, over people's homes and next to a hospital. No towns were issued until 9 p.m. Okay, that's the radar returns for the small aircraft ZZ418 that was above my house for 3 days and 3 nights continuously with its partner plane ZG996. Now it left here and went to Smilog Woods. Now the line on the in grey, the trajectory of that green object, the yellow line on the radar return is the same line, and they stop in the exact impact site. So not just anywhere in Smilog Woods, but the exact impact site. Now the red dot in the middle of the screen is where you have a witness testimony from a member of staff at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital that heard and felt the explosions and told us that the hospital had a phone call at 4:30 in the morning to say their services were not required. The hospital, no prior notification. God forbid they were doing neurosurgery that night. Brain surgery, because they do neurosurgery at the hospital. It was quite violent, the shaking. And I believe it was the shaking of the hospital that was responsible for the Richter scale measurement that was felt in Monmouth 4 miles away.
Can you remember what the figure was?
No, it registered. It wasn't like an earthquake, for example. It registered. I mean, this was an explosion that registered. Had it been an earthquake, then it would have been huge, you know. But the fact that nothing else was going on that night means that the military were responsible for that signal. You know, we are having people come forward. You know, we've got witnesses in Bettis and Bridgend that saw a cluster of green objects being pursued by military jets and helicopters west of here. The military exceeded the NOTAM that did go out at 9 p.m. that night by over 50 miles, something they would never do in an exercise. The NOTAM is a notice to a restricted space, and they would never exceed that NOTAM because it would be endangering other aircraft. But they did that night by over 50 miles. We've got witnesses in Port Talbot that saw the green objects. We've got witnesses in Bettis, as I said, in Bridgend, in Neath, in Swansea, in Gowerton, and all the way out to sea in a perfectly straight line west of here. They pursued those objects. The Colwinston witness said that the green objects had tried to hide in the field next to his house, and the helicopters were sweeping left and right across the fields looking for it. And once they were almost upon it, this green object has popped up and skipped away again in front of them, running for its life. They had over 20 military helicopter gunships in and a 20-mile radius all the way around us. Those objects had nowhere to go. It didn't matter in which direction they went, they would be met by military helicopters. Merlin helicopters, Lynx helicopters, Apache helicopters, Black helicopters, I don't know what you call them, all at the same time, not including C-17s, C-130s, 2 E-3 Sentry AWACS planes, one of which was from NATO, and all at the same time. This was not a military exercise. You can go and watch a military exercise. You know, one day they might have an aircraft fly up in the morning and then do a couple of flybys and land again. They might do some parachute jumps in the afternoon, and you can go and watch this. But they would never do it over a residential area in the early hours of the morning for one reason, for fear of accidents. And there was an accident tonight. The Apache helicopter had to do a full emergency landing at Cardiff International Airport. They did this next to a hospital with sick people. They did this over people's homes where their children slept.
No regard.
The Ministry of Defence's own rules state they are not allowed to carry live ammunition for a residential area, let alone use it. But they did that night.
Yeah.
Because their explanations for the explosion do not fit with what happened. I heard the explosion here in Pentyrch. Llantriston is 5 miles away. Shake people's homes. We've had a new witness come forward again in Pentyrch that said her bungalow was shaking. Her home was shaking from this explosion. This was no small explosion. This was huge because they used a missile.
Yeah, it's just totally shocking. Totally shocking. Ancient Ruby's wanting to know, Caz, could this ship resemble an obelisk at all? Because I saw one of these many years ago that changed shape. You said it was a triangle, didn't you, rather than a...
This was a 3-sided pyramid that was turned size. We estimate to be 3 times the length of a football field wide.
Wow.
On each
That's
side.
Big.
The field that it came in and moved back across was over 1,000 feet long. And the EMF trail actually follows the pyramid took. This was no small craft. It was several thousand feet high. If you can't see the top whilst you're looking at the bottom in your peripheral vision from 200 yards away, the thing was enormous. And just smaller craft.
I know you said that the smaller objects that came out of it didn't make a noise or anything. Did the large craft make a noise, or was that silent as well?
Nothing. Absolutely silent. No noise, no downdraft, no nothing.
No.
There wasn't even any distortion in the sky as it came through. It was almost as if it came through a black veil, or as if you were approaching a vehicle in fog. And initially you'll see like the 2 headlights and you think, oh, car, And then as you get a little bit closer, you see, oh, it's a lorry, it's got light. And as you go past, it's the big famous fizzy drink lorry, with all the lights on the side. That's what it was like. Not a very good analogy, but that's what it was like. It came in gradually, and it came in point first and side on. And then once it was fully here, then it turned, and swung down. If this was just a UFO, I'd have probably never said anything at all.
Yeah.
But I was so shocked and so appalled by the way that we treated them. If we are facing a threat, then we should know. I didn't see any hostility from them at all. See any hand of friendship extended by us. No line of communication, nothing.
No.
Set a number. They pursued it and they shot that green object down. I don't know what happened to the pyramid. There's a little bit of confusion on the Sky show that said that, the military attacked the pyramid. I didn't see that. But they did pursue that green object, I believe, was a deliberate decoy to draw the aircraft away from the main craft and the other craft it had jettisoned.
Patricia Adams Wright, hi Pat, says, Caz, if any idea if the first aircraft you saw had advanced warning? Advanced warning.
I know that the Beechcraft aircraft, ZZ418, call sign Snake 48, was taken out of service in 2012 and brought back into service in 2014, having had some major top secret refit.
Right.
And we know that it's been fitted with state-of-the-art infrared systems beyond the FLIR system where they can see in 3D. It's part of the I-STAR project, which work in tandem with the E3 Sentries, the AWACS planes. We know that the United States Air Force, our Air Force and military are monitoring for a frequency to know when these craft are going to appear. And it's through satellites they're doing it. Satellites are so important.
Yeah.
And the satellites beam that information directly to the E3 Sentries, and the E3 Sentries work in tandem with the smaller craft, because clearly you can't have an E3 Sentry circling your house in the early hours of the morning. But they're the ones that I think pinpoint that frequency to know where it's going to happen. I mean, initially that ZZ418 plane went down to Exmoor, went down to Plymouth, came up to Pentyrch and settled here with its partner plane for 3 days and 3 nights continuously. They did not leave the airspace unwatched, not for a single minute. You know, one plane wouldn't go and then the other one turn up. They would wait for the plane to come and then they would go and continue this flight pattern. So I hope that answered the question. I'm not really a plane spotter, but there's so much secretive stuff around that. You know, I can find out more about planes than I can Beechcraft aircraft. It is an above top secret aircraft.
Right. My thing about it is, if this was happening on a regular basis, you'd be seeing this. People would be reporting all this activity. This has been significant for some reason. This is more significant than just a UFO, you know, in the area kind of thing. They knew about this, and they were there.
There's something more to it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
I think this is the first time something of this scale has happened in this country, and our government were caught a little bit cold as to how to answer questions, which have been able to answer many lies.
Yeah.
Lies. I think this has happened across the world many times.
Yeah.
But where does that leave us?
Well,
if these things are not hostile, we are attacking them. What happens if they come back with their gunships? I mean, we've discovered the secret report conducted by the Ministry of Defence called the Condign Report.
Yeah.
And in that report, they state on numerous occasions, UFOs are of no defence significance and are not a threat. If they are not a threat, why are we firing upon them? Why do we have an armed space force? Why does that armed space force need to be ready for 2025? What's going to happen in 2025? What do they need to be ready for?
That's it. Are they ever going to tell us?
Yeah. Doubtful.
I think the Pentagon have done the right thing in admitting that these things are real.
Yeah.
That's the start. How it's going to affect us in the future. It tells us in the Bible there will be a war in the heavens that every free man will witness. And I think it's real, which is why Space Force is up there protecting the satellites, because the satellites are distorting the frequency. And clearly the frequency in that area had been disturbed for it to be snowing in the field where the pyramid came in.
Yeah, it was a strange sort of snow though, wasn't it?
Yeah, the resonance in that area clearly changed. And if, as we believe, the military were triangulating a satellite into that area, is it to distort the frequency to stop them from using these gateways, these conduits?
Yeah.
Because every major UFO sighting in the world, not just here, has happened on ley lines or where ley lines converge. These energy ports on Earth, these conduits, how long in advance did they know they were coming?
Yeah.
But they knew they were coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was there days before anything happened.
They trained for it the week before. The problem is they're doing this without our knowledge and without our consent. And that's a very, very dangerous situation for all of us.
Yeah.
We should be told.
But do you think by them telling everyone everything, a lot of people aren't going to be able to cope with what's really going on?
Well, I've said the very first time that I went public, I said that perhaps they could release 95% of the information that they have.
Yeah.
And that there's 5% that perhaps people aren't ready to hear.
Yeah.
But when you've got presidents, congressmen, people that are in charge of our country that do not know, it needs to be said. It needs to be said. The secrecy has gone on for too long.
Yeah.
I would love for the American president to stand up and say, well, you know, for the last 80 years or so, we've been bringing these craft down, that we have advanced technologies, plasma weapons, anti-gravity. I think the TR-3B has been declassified now.
Yeah.
But we need to be told. I think the more we learn about space, the more outrageous a notion it is that we are alone. We've been told about more Earth-like planets in the last 2 years than we have ever been told about. How Earth-like do they have to be to sustain life?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I read an article yesterday that they found soil on the far side of the moon. Don't know how true it is, but even that, it's just that one little bit of knowledge is better than them not telling us anything at all.
There are structures on the moon that I'm pretty sure we didn't build. Yeah. And there are pictographs and structures on planets and moons in our Milky Way that I'm pretty sure we didn't build. So who did? There are structures on asteroids that go around the asteroid belt that are foreign and are not man-made, but constructed, not by us. And of course, there's the Black Knight satellite, first discovered, I think it was 1922.
Yeah.
So it's not space junk from the International Space Station. It's not a blanket. It is, in fact, there were 2 satellites that were discovered back then, way before before Russia put Sputnik up there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it was Gary McKinnon that discovered the Black Knight satellite. And no one's actually spoken about the other one. But there are 2 that are estimated to be, what did they say, 13,000 years old?
Wow.
And that's not a conspiracy either. It's real.
Yeah. Diane Alexander wants to know, Caz, do you still feel watched or threatened for what you experienced?
Absolutely. And this is not a joke, I've kicked the CIA off my page. I've kicked police officers off my page that are asking questions as to in which direction the investigation is going, hoping to glean inside information. But that's not going to happen.
No.
Until we have the answers that we're looking for.
Yeah. Steve Trees wants to know, have you been interviewed or threatened by the authorities?
Yes. First off, I was leant on and interrogated by the mainstream media. When my comment first went up the very same day, I was asked who I'd spoken to, how I'd spoken to them specifically, you know, was it email, chat box, text, phone call. And I don't intimidate easily, but when I got off the phone, I was physically shaking. The questioning went on and on and on, and it was quick fire, one after the other. They didn't give you time to think about anything. So I was intimidated there. And then later, I was approached by somebody that had contacted me via my Facebook page, who I thought genuinely had an interest in the case. And that wasn't the case. They were definitely military, and they were definitely part of what happened that night. And that was what really set the fire under me to come forward, because the threat extended to my children and my family with perhaps a fatal car accident. And no one's going to threaten my kids.
No one. Definitely not. No.
But I think it's extremely important for all of us as a race that we are told about this, because before, and I'll say it and I keep saying it, we are one race. We are one planet.
Yeah.
And if anything happens to us, that's it for the human race. Perhaps that's why Elon Musk is going to do a bunk to Mars. Who knows?
Yeah, probably. But I think the more people that are told and the more people that know about this, they can't start hiding. They can't bump everybody off, can they? So,
Don't tempt them, Deborah.
No, I'm not tempting them.
I'm
But you know what I
hoping-
mean? The more it's out there and the more people know, I think the better.
I'm hoping that
better off we are.
witnesses come forward to me and not this UFO group that was initially involved that can't be trusted.
Yeah.
I have a website for the Pentyrch Incident.com or .co.uk, and there is a safe space on there for witnesses. Yeah. To come to me. It comes through to me. Please.
Yeah.
Come to me. Trust me. I will keep your details in the strictest confidence. You don't even have to give me your real name. But if you've got a video or photographic evidence of what happened that night, the world needs to see it.
Yeah, they do.
Even if you come through a third party, please. This was real.
Yeah, definitely. Breaking the Clouds would like to know, Caz, so which craft do you think was shot down, the large one or one of the barrels? I think you said it was one of the barrels, didn't you?
It was the bright green object that was the first object to come out of the pyramid. The one that I couldn't tell what shape it was because it was so bright. The one that drew the aircraft away towards Llantrisant, and the one where the Apache helicopters came from left to right on an interception course with that green object. And I think it was that green object that was shot down and pushed into Smilog Woods. Not the pyramid. I don't know what happened to the pyramid. It was sighted 9 miles southeast of Pentyrch over Colwinston, and then the helicopters and that pushed everything back west. So they literally brought the net in. The choppers coming over Carriage, over Narth, over Llantwit Major, down the valleys from the Cunnan Valley. Somebody said that the Chinook was flying so low and so fast, and nearly took the chimney off of his house. Wow. Another gentleman has said that the helicopters were so low that they were at eye level with pilots. Somebody else in Whitchurch in Cardiff had the tops of their trees cut off by one of the helicopters that was coming in. They were that low.
They were pursuing that without any regard for anybody else, weren't they?
No regard whatsoever. No. And there was no prior warning. The police did a counter-terrorism exercise in June. They sent everybody a letter to tell them what they were going to do. And it was all done within the boundaries of some disused warehouses in Llantrisant, because they hope people's memories will fade over time. That when they look back, they say, oh, yes, we had prior warning. They didn't. This happened in February and there was no prior warning. The hospital didn't know. The fire service didn't know. The mainstream media didn't know. If this was an exercise, they'd have all known. The local council didn't know. National Resources for Wales didn't know. And that's local government.
Yeah.
And they want us to believe it was Exercise Chameleon, which was 310 miles away the week before in Durham, north of England. Nothing to do with South Wales at all.
Mad. We're heading towards a break in a couple of minutes. There's a comment from Ancient Ruby about when he mentioned about the obelisk. If you look at an obelisk, it's like a triangle-shaped top. And why I asked, it was at least 1/4 of a mile long too. That was quite big, the one that they saw.
Yeah. And this is the point. I've had so many people that have come forward to me with their experiences, not just for the Pentyrch in general, not just in Wales, but in the UK.
Yeah.
And across the world, in fact. There are tens of thousands of witnesses to these strange phenomena, these identified flying craft that stop and do right-hand turns that our pilots couldn't possibly do. There needs to be a public inquiry into this, and not swamp gas or ball lightning or all these other ridiculous explanations that they give. We should be able to challenge the answers that they give us and not just accept. This is a real phenomena, and if we are facing a threat, we should be told.
Yeah, we should.
For many reasons. I don't think it's going to cause a panic at all. I think it's right and proper that if we're not top of the food chain, we should be told. It would give our children as a race now from across the world, bring us together, that our children will learn the sciences and the technologies that we will need now, not in the future, to fight against a common enemy, if there is one. And clearly, that if they're not expecting a galactic war, they're certainly doing a damn good job of preparing for one.
Exactly,
Space-based weapons, ground-fired lasers, plasma weapons, machine guns on their satellites. Space Force, an armed Space Force. The 6th Defense Service of the United States. Thank you, Mr. Trump, for telling us that, and for singling out that one sentence. The 6th Armed Defense Force of the United States. That's a very big statement. Why do we need an armed Space Force?
Exactly.
I listened very closely.
We'll head for a 2-minute break, and then there's a couple more questions that have popped up. We'll go into those after the break.
Yep.
So 2 minutes. Have a fag. Go for a wee.
Stretch me back.
Yes. That 2 minutes.
We're back. I know, quickest 2 minutes ever.
I know.
Didn't get many cartwheels done in that time, I tell you.
Stretch you back. Right. Steve Trees has asked, can you tell us more about iStar that you mentioned earlier?
Gary's the one, really. I stand for, I'd have to refer to the book, to be honest, or look at the evidence myself. But the iStar project has 28 task forces involved. And if you know what a task force is, it consists of everything and everything that you'll need. And that includes submarines, aircraft carriers, everything you can think of. And these task forces are watching for these things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what iStar is. And that's why Galileo is so important and a sticking point when we left the EU, which we're just about to get back into now, for Galileo, for that reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Alison wants to know, Caz, did you have any experiences before this?
No, it was never an interest. I wish, and then I would have had someone I could have spoken to about this, but I genuinely didn't know anyone. I actually went to the Welsh UFO network initially on the internet. It was the first thing I thought of doing. And it turned out to be Mr. Lee Thomas, who was a one-man band, and I didn't know. And he's actually said if I was serious to go and speak to Mr. Richard D. Hall. And
Yeah.
I said, well, who's Richard Hall? Because I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. And it just happened that he was doing a conference in Merthyr that very Sunday night on the 28th of February 2016. And I decided there and then that I would go and see him and tell him what happened, because I was told he was the best. And I needed the best. I needed to tell someone that would know what to do with this information, because I genuinely didn't know. I didn't know what Richard looked like. I didn't know if I would be able to get to speak to him, but I had to try. And that was the thing. And so many people stood up in the audience afterwards. I mean, once I'd spoken to Richard, I don't think I took a breath. No. And then he invited me to stand up at the end of the audience. And I'd never spoken publicly before in my life. And, you know, members of staff from the hospital stood up. And one lady had explained how it had taken her over 3 hours to get home because all the roads were closed.
Yeah.
By Union Police. And when she inquired as to why the road was closed, she was told that a truck had overturned. And when, you know, on her last attempt to go up a different mountain road, she said to the police officer, it's a mighty big truck that can close all roads. They actually closed the a section of the M4 motorway that night. And it just happened to be southeast of it. And they turned off the cameras for that stretch of motorway also. They came back on again the next morning. NASA Skywatch, the Earthwatch, that too has been deleted for the week preceding the event, up until and including the 26th of February 2016. All of the footage is gone. There's so much evidence of absence, shall we say, or low-level flying exercises have been deleted because none of them were over a residential area in the early hours of the morning.
So all these things just add up, don't they, to make one great big... They'd be better off just saying, right, yeah, we had an incident, rather than all this stupid cover-up.
On the 4th year anniversary, Gary and I did a small presentation, and unfortunately, because the weather was extremely bad, we had quite a poor turnout. And there were two people that stood out, and they were from the Ministry of Defence. And in fairness to them, as other witnesses, I will not give a description of them. Needless to say, it was one man and one woman.
Yeah.
And the man was quite critical, saying, you know, how do you know that what you saw wasn't a drone? And I think he didn't realise at that time how close I'd come to those things.
Yeah.
I said, look, unless we can make drones that are, you know, 10 foot high, 6 feet wide and fly completely silently, then I'd have to concur. But I'm yet to see us build a pyramid that can fly. And his head dropped. Well, afterwards, the lady came up to me and she took me by the hand and she said, the Ministry of Defence do know. I said, I know they know I was there. I saw them.
Yeah.
And as she walked away from me, it was like she really did have the weight of the world on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Like these people are placed in these positions where they're not allowed to say, and they need to.
Yeah.
No, I really genuinely hope that somebody from the military, anonymously or otherwise, comes forward with some evidence, because again, this was real. This is not a joke. This is not a story. This is real. This really happened. You know, and it affects us all. You know, people are afraid to come forward because they say they're afraid for their children. What about everybody else's children? What about my children? You know, this affects all of us. It's all very well sitting in your little bubble at home, not worried about anything except for what you're going to have for tea tonight. When really, this is a global problem and affects every single one of us. You know, so even if they come through a third party, this information needs to be shown. It needs to be heard. People need to know the truth.
Yeah,
and I've told the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I've done my duty as a human being to come out and tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And it's an extraordinarily large burden for me, not just for us, but for them.
Yeah.
Who are they? People say, well, if these things are real, why doesn't one land on the White House lawn? And after what I witnessed that night, it's quite clear that they're very worried about our hostility.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know that they're hostile. So why are we facing them with hostility?
Well, the Ministry of Defence in their Condign report, their secret study, where they lied to Parliament and said there was no such study. They lied to the mainstream and said there was no study. And they've lied to the general public and said there was no study. The Condign report is very real.
Yeah.
And it was commissioned by the Ministry of Defence. And on multiple occasions within that secret study, they have said UFOs are not a threat and are of no defence significance. There are no defence significance. How can they hide behind Section 26 defence?
Excellent. Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
They contradict themselves.
Yeah, they do. Breaking the Clouds would like to know, Caz, how are you defining what a ley line is? Where does the Pentyrch one run off to?
Okay, well, we have 3 that converge here. Yeah, and one of them runs all the way to Stonehenge.
Right. Yeah.
And they're natural energy lines on Earth.
Yeah.
And when you look at them, they actually form a geometric pattern that is precise, that resembles the flower of life from the Masons.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know where this energy grid comes from, but it certainly looks artificial to me.
Yeah. I know that they built significant one on, like the cross points is usually churches or significant buildings that are built on the ley lines where the cross.
Military bases and all that are built on them as well.
Yeah.
Some of them are. We've tried to cover every kind of investigation here. And after what happened to me, I have to remain open-minded. Yeah. And that's not to say that necessarily I believe everything, but I have to believe that all things are possible.
Yeah.
And so we've had spiritualist mediums, dowsing rods, other sensitives come to this area. And individually, they've identified 2 energy lines here.
Right.
At the edge of the field where this pyramid came in, there are enormous stones. And it really looks like these stones have been moved off at these energy points. And often there's the opposite vortexes to each other.
Yeah.
Energy centers. So at some point, it would have resembled Karnak stones, 2 aisles of huge stones. And we think that perhaps they were removed or cleared during Roman times for agriculture.
Right.
But we don't know. There are no ancient maps that show that. But there is an ancient burial ground on the Garth Mountain here.
Right.
So there is something to the area.
Yeah, definitely.
The energy in that field after the event made people ill.
Yeah.
The EMF there made people really ill. Nausea was the biggest thing. Everybody felt so sick. And doing repeated investigations on consecutive days was impossible. It was that bad. And that was 20 months after the event. Up until and including 5 years for that EMF to dissipate completely. Not including the radiation that was found.
Well, yeah, that as well. I was going to say,
There was radiation there. And I don't know how high it was. I didn't know anything about EMF radiation back then.
No.
But something turned my hair completely white.
Yeah. Kelly says, how many times has this happened before and been covered up? That's true. We'll never know.
I don't know. Roswell was covered up. Rendlesham was covered up. Nottingham was covered up.
Yeah.
Berwyn Mountains was covered up. The list goes on, and that's just off the top of my head that I know about.
Yeah.
It's always been covered up. And the point is that they're putting us in danger.
Yeah.
Definitely. When Senator Richard Blumenthal at the Senate hearing for Space Force, talking with General Dunford, the man who was in charge of Space Force at the time, when he said, we know what they are doing. Our adversaries know what they are doing. And they know that we know what they are doing. He said, but the American people had no idea. And if they did, there would be some grave concern.
Yeah.
Why? Who are they?
Yeah.
Who are they?
Who are they?
It's always
You know,
they, isn't it?
they clearly know. Yeah, they clearly know a lot more than they're telling us. What have they done, our military done, to put us in this position?
Yeah.
Because if we have been hostile and deliberately bringing these craft down the best part of 70, 80 years, we only got to bring down the wrong ones to get some kind of retaliation.
Exactly.
Where does that leave us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
I understand that they did it initially probably for the technology.
Yeah.
But now that we have that technology, what's the excuse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know?
It's just like the question: how many times has it happened, and how many times has it happened that we don't know about? That they have covered it up so well
Right.
that no public knows about it.
Yeah.
It'll have been gone years, centuries.
Right.
God knows.
And you
I think
think,
they've been here a lot longer than we have.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think of the
Strongly
places,
believe that.
the places in this country that are untouched, like up in the Scottish Highlands and what have you. How do we know that this isn't happening up there with no witnesses other than the military?
Yeah.
Right. And out in the ocean too.
Yeah,
There are a
definitely.
lot out there.
Yeah.
You know, Rick's saying that there's no way that we can match them. We actually do have their technology now.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Trump said, we might be behind, but we're catching up quickly.
Yeah.
Other people said, you know, why didn't this object just shoot off up into space? Well, I think we presume an awful lot. Perhaps they couldn't shoot off into space, which is why they came here in the large pyramid craft.
Yeah.
You know, there are many different types.
Yeah.
From just the people that I've spoken to, the experiences, including the lady with the obelisk on your show, I've not heard of someone seeing an obelisk before.
No.
But certainly large cylindrical craft, others are triangular craft, pyramid craft. We've had small round craft, then you've got the Tic Tac UFO. They're all different.
Yeah.
Are these different races? Or is it like us with our cars? You know, they're all different. But not seen two the same.
No.
How many?
Maybe. So I was just going to say, maybe they're not from space. That's why they didn't go shooting back up.
Maybe.
Right, and that's the other thing. Actually, Earth is part of two galaxies, not one. It's part of the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, which is only visible in infrared, coincidentally. Right. And it has been mapped completely. Which is why I believe the Hubble telescope was fitted with state-of-the-art infrared cameras back in the 90s, or 80s. Right. And it crosses on Earth. So maybe these craft be visible in infrared. I think there was a famous one in Mexico where the Mexican Air Force were monitoring these UFOs that they couldn't see with the naked eye, but they could see them on the FLIR systems. Yeah. And it was almost, there were 11 of them in total. A very famous shot. And it was almost as if the one at the back was almost childlike. That one would stop for this little chap. These craft that I saw were like living machines. Yeah. Like they were conscious. They had feelings. They were afraid.
Yeah.
The essence of life encapsulated in these things. A lot of UFOs seem to appear and disappear.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they are from the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, and they're able to use the conduits on Earth to switch from, shall we say, BBC One to BBC Two.
Yeah.
And back again, which is why they seem to appear and then disappear. When in reality, all they're doing is moving,
swapping frequencies
between channels.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all frequencies.
Yeah.
Don't know how deep, but it's the number one priority for the Ministry of Defence in this country.
Yeah. Nickname wants to know, will you be writing another book?
We've compiled another 5 years of evidence. The will never stop. Never. Not until they release the information for that night. I will never stop, even if I have to go to multiple governments. Even I have to go to the European government.
Yeah.
I will. Because this is too important not to.
Yes. It is. And any petition that you start that you want signing, just let me know.
Yeah.
We'll all be behind you with that one.
Yes. Thank you. I need 10,000 signatures.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, we can add our signatures, and anybody else that wants to sign as well. We'll share it all over the shop.
Yeah. Just let us know. Send it over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll move it around and get it back to you as soon as.
Fantastic.
Joe's
Thank you.
asking, do you know what they look like? But I don't know what she means when she's saying who looks like what.
Well, I didn't see any of Spielberg's funny things. Let's put it that way. I said again, the craft themselves seemed to be alive.
Yeah.
They were alive. They communicated with each other. They communicated with us. They ran for their lives. They were afraid.
Yeah.
They tried to hide. We shot them down anyway. You know, I'm not sure that what the grey aliens are, but I didn't see any that night.
No. Janice wants to know, is Caz familiar with the Greda Treaty, a supposed deal for arms and technology between America and aliens? I've not heard of that either. I'll have to look into that.
No, I'm afraid not.
No, me neither.
No, I've not heard that. But speaking with some of the greatest minds in the world, including that of Linda Moulton Howe, who gave me the benefit of her 70 years on this planet.
Yeah.
And there's more things going on in the Arctic than we've ever been led to believe. I think that's why they're a little bit worried about global warming, because it's starting to reveal some of the things that are hidden there.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the huge buildings that are there that we clearly did not build, that have been accessible via submarine.
Yep.
And she's had military personnel come forward to her. And this is definitely alien technology.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps that's why Hitler went there in World War II. But there's certainly something else here, and that has been here before us. I think the earliest one or information that I've been able to find that's written down is in Christopher Columbus's ship log, where they talk about lights under the ocean, traveling at enormous speeds and taking off and flying into the sky. Well, we don't have flying hubs even today.
No. That's been seen quite a lot off the East Coast as well, lights under the sea.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something under the ocean, and what 2/3 of the planet is covered in water.
Yeah.
What a wonderful place to hide.
Exactly. Yeah.
For the ones that are here, you know.
And Paul Hadley saying
towards the ocean.
Yeah. Paul Hadley's saying, do you think RAF Fylingdales has anything to do with it, which is on the North Yorkshire Moors? They're a listening station. I should think they're all
very
in it, to
possibly
be honest.
Then, yes. Yes, they are. There's also a place right in the middle of the Brecon Beacons that's listening for these things all the time.
Yeah.
The satellites are definitely monitoring for the frequency. You know, we have Galileo here. The Americans have GPS. It does a lot more than tell you where you are on the planet.
Yeah.
They're multi-billion-pound satellites, and they are primarily seeking the frequency, which is why the sticking point with us leaving the EU, when the EU said that we could only use Galileo when they said we could, could use it, I should say. And now it's all back on again with us being able to use Galileo, because that's what they're monitoring for, what they're listening for.
Yeah.
And they're expecting something.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast today, and they was talking about the Galileo, but that's going to be on their next podcast, so they didn't really go into it that much. So obviously, I'll wait till next week now before they release it. But that'd be interesting to see what they're going to say on it.
Yeah, very much. They'll tell you they're monitoring for UFOs using the frequency, though.
Yeah,
But it is part
yeah,
of the I-star. That's exactly what the satellites are. And Galileo is not one satellite; it's a ring of satellites.
yeah. I was going to say
Same as
there's quite a
GPS.
few in
There
there.
are a lot of them. But that's what it is. They're monitoring for the frequency.
Yeah,
It was Ross Coulthard that was kind enough to release that information to us. He said that Bob Fish, who is he's got above top secret clearance and actually fitted the comms for the White House. So he is who he says he is.
yeah,
Was the man that leaked that information to Ross Coulthard, who went public with it, to state that the United States Air Force, for at least 30 years, have been monitoring this frequency to know when these craft are, quote, going to appear and to be able to track them using it. So they know what the frequency is.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Excellent. Sorry, 1 second. So, what? I know there's a lot of questions in that, but what's your overall take on everything that's gone on?
I was appalled at the way that the military behaved.
Yeah.
You know, if they were hostile, I'm grateful they were there, but I didn't see any hostility from them.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel any hostility from them. And that might sound bizarre, but that's the truth.
Yeah. But like you said, though,
Also,
when the light. Sorry, when you said the lights changed from red to green,
yes,
and that's when you felt different, like inside
yes,
yourself.
indeed,
Your,
yes.
I suppose your chemistry inside you just completely changed.
Well, I have a signal inside of my
Yeah.
body. In fact, it's my body's resonance has changed.
Right.
And that only came out when I took the polygraph tests, something that my polygraph examiner had never seen before.
Right.
And I wasn't aware of it until I took the polygraph test.
Yeah.
But it certainly affected me health-wise initially. And again, initially, I didn't connect the dots. I didn't, it was small things at first, like becoming allergic to a vitamin tablet I've taken my entire life, to suddenly becoming anaphylactic when I wasn't before. And it accumulated that on New Year's Eve 2016, going into 2017, I nearly died. And it was then that I connected the dots to say, hang on a moment, this has only happened since this event. And when I took the polygraph and saw that my body's resonance has changed. It is constant and unchanging, which is unnatural. And it quite shocked my polygraph examiner. Right. I mean, Carrie Austin, who was my polygraph examiner, she is the leading forensic polygraph examiner in the country, and our government to use her. And she is the person that invented the pretest for the polygraph. So she's not just anyone. She's probably the best, if the best in her field. I've never seen anything like it before in her life. And I was pretty shocked. I didn't know either.
Nickname's asking, has any ex-military come forward from that event to you, Caz?
No, and I wish they would. Unfortunately, the Official Secrets Act is very weak, and they are threatened with their lives should they breach it. And that could leave them in a firing squad for real. And this is why I asked them to come through not only anonymously, but through a third party, so they couldn't be identified.
Yeah.
I would never identify a witness if they didn't want to. I know certain people have outed the real name of one of my primary witnesses, and for that reason I walked away from those people. Because they can't be trusted. I think you know what I'm talking about, Dave.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I will protect with my life.
Yeah. Breaking the Clouds is asking, Caz, what is the frequency, and does it correspond with the ley line frequency as well? I suppose you'd have to be.
I don't know what the ley line frequency is, and I don't know what the frequency is that they're monitoring for, but there's thing that they are monitoring. It was something that Ross Coulthard didn't actually come out and tell us what the frequency is. So that would be very handy for everyone, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody knows, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, including Ross, if you know, tell us.
Yeah.
Because they are monitoring for a frequency, and I believe very low frequency. Years ago, I used to make sonar equipment for the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah.
And everything within the Ministry of Defence works on very low frequencies.
Yeah.
Very low frequencies. In fact, nothing exceeds 1 watt. Nothing. So if it's over 1 watt, it's good to them. Very low frequency. So whatever frequency it is that they're monitoring for is on the very low scale.
Yeah. I know they're always listening for signals and what's the word? I had the word in my head then. Signals and no, it's gone. Anyway, they're always listening for them.
Yeah. Whatever they are.
Yeah. Just went out of my head then. Poof.
Whatever they are. Whatever they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I might be wrong, but I did hear somewhere the key line frequency is 49 hertz from Steve T. 49 hertz.
Okay. Well, to just bounce on that just a little bit. Earth's resonance used to be, I believe, 433 hertz. That was the natural resonance of Earth. I believe Bob Marley used to publish all of his music in the same frequency.
Yeah.
But in the last few years, Earth's frequency hasn't just changed. It hasn't just doubled. It's more than doubled. Something artificial is going on.
Yeah.
Now, whether that be using satellites to distort the frequency on Earth to prevent them from using these conduits via the satellite would be a bit more like it, I think. But something is changing the natural resonance of Earth.
Yeah.
And it can't be for the planet.
No. Oh, another question's popped up. Robert McIntyre, Caz, do you think we might have an alien war, US and other aliens versus other aliens? I read that right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it means...
Yes.
Sorry.
I think that's what they are preparing for. You know, when General Dunford was asked by Senator Richard Blumenthal why they were launching Space Force then, he said to iron out any problems that we haven't foreseen, to be ready for 2025. Ready for what?
Yeah. Makes you wonder.
And that came out of General's mouth. So I think clearly they are preparing for something. Whether they're going to travel through space, that is also a possibility.
Yeah.
I think they're supposed to have sent missiles to an asteroid, we've been told. And they launched that telescope recently so that they could watch it in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it an asteroid or not?
Exactly.
You know, we don't know. We have to accept what we're told because we haven't got telescopes out there to watch it. But they've sent a lot of missiles to deal with an asteroid. If it is an asteroid.
Yeah.
I mean, these, you know, what was the Hawaiian one that they called the one that came in, the cylindrical shaped one that, you know, a few times went around the Earth a couple of times and then shot off again. Very similar to this one. This has stopped, gone around planets, and then it's continued on a course with Earth. I don't see many asteroids doing that.
No, I don't. They're a bit unpredictable usually.
Yeah. If it's anything like the Battle of Ballet, when we sent several hundred mortar shells at what was later said to be a weather balloon, I don't think our missiles are going to have any effect at all.
No.
You know? Again, that should have been questioned. That was the official explanation to the Battle of LA in the height of World War II.
Yeah.
Perhaps a terrestrial war is the cover for these UFO craft that come en masse. How many of our pilots saw Foo Fighters in World War II?
Yeah.
In the Battle of LA in height of World War II, we've got the Nazis in the Arctic, shooting at things flying in and out of the water at the height of World War II.
Yeah.
So another terrestrial war, perhaps this conflict with the Ukraine and Russia might be the key to the cover of something arriving.
Yes.
You know, people hear an explosion in the sky and there's a war going on, no one's going to look. You know?
So a question from me, what are your thoughts when you read things about alien abductions and what have you? What are your thoughts about that?
There's a lot going on regarding human trafficking, mutations, and murder. Whether or not that's alien, or whether or not there are some abominations on this planet that are responsible for that, I don't know. Some of the cattle mutilations, on the other hand, the ones that have been early on, black helicopters have been seen in the area where cattle mutilations have happened. The Dulcie base is supposed to be a joint base between us and them. And they do horrific genetic experiments. Well, the only reason they would be horrific is using human beings. Perhaps they need some DNA, some genetic code to make more of themselves. I don't know, and I can't really answer that. But I do believe we were the people that broke the treaty. Colonel Corso wrote in his book, Beyond Roswell, that it was like an agreed surrender on our part, as opposed to a treaty. But that they were allowed to abduct people as long as they were armed, with no memory of the event. It should have happened. But when the Russians broke the treaty by filming them, because that was one of their conditions, were that they were not to be filmed or photographed. Many people have been abducted. Some have never returned. Others have been mutilated, that have been covered up by the police forces in multiple countries. I think there was one in Romania of a young girl that was found the next morning. And the very famous one that everybody's seen in the Mexico. And these injuries are horrific whilst the people were still alive. Dead bodies don't bruise.
No, they
You
don't.
don't get bruising like that when you're still alive. So I can't really answer that. Again, if we're facing this kind of threat, people should know who the good guys and who are the bad guys, so that we don't put ourselves in danger. So perhaps we can have some kind of hotline where we can phone up and say, do you know this is going on? Or do you know these craft are in this area? If they're hostile. So that we might know the difference.
Yeah, well, that's it.
But
Because they're not, just going to say, because they're not telling us anything, how do we know who's friend and who's foe? We're just under the impression that, they're all hostile, they're all coming to attack us.
I think the official stance is that they don't exist. I'm glad that the Pentagon have come out and said, look, these craft are real. That's a good start. But we need to know who's hostile and who's not. Or are they all hostile, Either way, we should be told.
Yeah. Or is that just what they're telling us? Obviously, it is what they're telling us, but we need some clarification, like you just said, on what's what.
when you've got presidents and congressmen that don't know, and they're in charge of their country, that's a very dangerous situation when you've got people in secret that are shooting these craft down again without our knowledge or consent.
Yeah, but then it's like these leaders of countries, they're just a front person, and then the real leaders are working in the background as to what is actually going on.
Well,
in secret.
I listened to Jean-Claude Juncker when he addressed the entire European Union. And he stood there and said how he just had the meeting with the leaders of other planets. Not countries, planets.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised that nobody there seemed to bat an eyelid, because they all know.
Right.
So who are these people that observe us from afar, as Mr. Juncker was kind enough to tell us? Why would they be concerned with what we're doing? Because that was in his speech.
That's $1 million question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You know, you've got the head of the United States Army addressing a room full of officers, telling them how they're going to be fighting little green men and hybrid armies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so again, it's not what's being said. No, that's shocking enough. But who's saying it?
Yeah.
Where the information's coming from.
Yeah. Umbraman wants to know, are there any data or sites to follow this Earth frequency change?
Oh, goodness. Very possibly, but you'd have to dig deep for it. There are people that follow the seismic and volcanic and magnetic sphere change, and also Earth resonance. So yes, you can find it. And as I say, it has more than doubled. So we're in trouble if they're adapting.
Yeah.
And I believe they are adapting.
It sounds like it. Worryingly. Patricia Adams Wright asked, can I ask where 2025 came from, please? I was going to ask that, actually. Who mentioned
2025 was something that was mentioned in the Senate hearing for the funding for Space Force.
Right.
That they had to be ready for 2025 because they were asked specifically why they'd launched Space Force now. And the answer was so they could iron out any problems that they hadn't foreseen to be ready for 2025. Ready for what?
Yeah, that's quite worrying. Especially when that's all they said.
Yeah.
And they didn't follow it up with anything else.
Yeah. Well, it was a classified environment, and most of the things that they were talking about were classified. And thankfully, Senator Richard Blumenthal was the only one to really sort of touch upon the subject. And he said, I'm saying this is a classified environment. But, you know, you have to read between the lines about what's not being said. Ask the question to what's not being said. You know, that these people live with this. So this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you'd ever read a book by, I was looking for it, that's why I went off. Is it Gary L. Davis? Somebody L. Davis? It's from Wales, and it took an account from a student who was giving up university, and because she keeps being abducted, and she was taken across a field in Wales. She stopped in a car, like you said earlier, where they can stop your car. She was stopped in a car, ended up out of the car, and going across the field with about 200 other people in Wales, and they were taken into this like factory, and there were just horrific things going on in this factory. And the first book that he wrote was about poltergeist infestation that he had at home, but he actually wrote it as somebody else because he didn't want people to know it was him. So that was his first book, and then he's written a couple of books about poltergeist stuff, and then this one in particular. Like I said, it's somebody L. Davis. But I couldn't find it in my Amazon list. I've read it, but I thought with it being Wales, it might be worth reading if you knew the areas. Or
Indeed.
I'll find it for you, Caz, and I'll message you it. It'll
Amazing,
be in my list.
thank you.
It was quite a while since I got it, so it's quite far down.
There seems to be an awful lot of incidents with UFOs in Wales, and it seems becoming more and more frequent.
Yeah.
The military seem to trawl most nights, with 3 or 4 aircraft side by side, just trawling backwards and forwards across the sky. Why?
Yeah.
You know, it costs an awful lot of money to keep them up there.
It
So
does.
why are they trawling to keep them away?
Well, if it's, what is it, £5,000, is it an hour? £5,000 an hour for a police helicopter to be up there. How much is it costing the military for all this?
Right. We
Breaking
estimated.
Sorry, go on, Carl.
No.
Breaking the Cloud
Pyramid
says,
went off
Carl,
west.
you mentioned the Diffid that went off west. Was that in the direction of the old Diffid triangle?
Where is the old Diffid triangle? You'll have to give me. It's southwest, actually. Southeast of here is Colwinston. It's 9 miles southeast of here. And everything was pushed west after that. You know, when all the military helicopters and aircraft came in, like they had a net all the way around, they pushed everything west. So even though the pyramid had gone southeast and all the barrel-shaped objects had gone off in different directions, the military's net moved in and pushed them all west eventually. And that's where the other witnesses from Betters in Bridgend and Port Talbot and Neath come from, because that's directly west of here.
Ralph's asking, Caz, your thoughts on the 1974 UFO incident in the Berwyn Mountains?
Berwyn Mountains was a real incident, and the military covered that up. There were quite a lot of people that saw that, but definitely.
Is that the one that crashed? Crashed into the side of the mountain?
Yeah, and the military covered it up.
Yeah.
It's been going on for longer than I've been alive, probably.
Yeah.
And it's time it stopped.
Yeah,
because whatever they're doing is placing us in danger if they haven't already.
Yeah, exactly. Nickname, has Caz stumbled on any otherwise unknown cases while working on her own?
I have been privy to a lot of people's experiences. Some have come forward on the website to tell me their experiences, some of which are horrific.
Yeah.
You know, which is why I've set up a counselling service and support service for people that have had these horrific experiences for free. Absolutely free. I have doctors and hypnotic people that can do hypnotic regression. And they are qualified. And again, for free. This isn't a service you have to pay for. If you come through the website and you need help, because I don't want anyone to be in a situation that I was in.
No.
When it was, I discovered I had post-traumatic stress after this.
Yeah.
And my emotions were completely erratic. And I'd handle and not really understand why I was behaving that way, because it wasn't me before this event.
No.
And I had no one to talk to about it. So I don't want anyone ever to be in the position I was in.
No.
That there are professionals that are waiting for people. If you need help, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
And I'll put you in touch with people that help you for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put your website on at the bottom of this as well, so people can.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to send me the links, I can put them all in the description.
Yeah. I don't do this for money. I never have.
No.
You know, I funded the book myself so that I could produce the evidence for people to see with their own eyes.
Yeah.
I trust their own minds and my judge and jury, because this happened.
Yeah.
You know, I do have a chosen charity. I never ask for donations, ever. I do not collect donations or ask for them. I do not take money for being on TV shows. You know, I have a chosen charity, which is AP Cymru, which is a charity for autistic children.
Yeah.
So, you know, no one's paid for my polygraph tests. I paid for that myself.
Yeah.
You know, no one booked. I did it myself. You know, it's not about money for me. It's about proving the truth.
Yeah, getting the truth
and
out
that's
there.
what this is all. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Umbraman said, wasn't Space Force already operational from the 80s, according to Gary McKinnon?
Yes, Space Force has been operational for some time, in secret. And this is the difference. Now it's been made public, and you may have seen some of the RAF advertisements on the TV for recruiting to get people interested in going into space, because they need space fighters. When Donald Trump was given the award by General Yardley for and on behalf of all space fighters, he was talking in the present, the future.
Yeah.
They need people up there to fight, not to fly around in space having a jolly, to fight. So there is something going on, and we need to be told. You know, the people that are in Space Force do not have any protection at all. I'm not talking about from extraterrestrials. I'm talking about legally, should they whistleblow. If they whistleblow, they have no protection whatsoever.
No, that's it, isn't it? There's just no one out there to do anything for them.
Ancient Ruby, I'll answer your question. What's my next step? My next step. The investigation is still ongoing, and unfortunately, I can't talk about what we are doing right now, because there are certain organizations, shall we say, that would be privy to what we're trying to do here. And certainly they've been trying to evade us, including South Wales Police, which I'm really looking forward to having a head-to-head with them. Cool. On the last Freedom of Information request we sent to them, their answer was that they can neither confirm or deny the question that we asked them. Where confirm and deny is a heading under the Freedom of Information request. You either can have the information exempt because X, Y, and Z, or you deny you have the information. You cannot say we can neither confirm or deny, or they could say that to every Freedom of Information request. So the next one that goes in, I will demand that they answer. They've tried to hide behind their ability to police and national security. I'd like to see it affect their ability to police in the past, because we're asking about things that happened in the past, not the future. And this big spiel that they went off on national security, because we asked about police counter-terrorism drills, and they gave us a spiel on national security and blah blah blah. And yet I can go on the internet and find 16 minimum, just within a short space of time, of 16 counter-terrorism drills that were advertised months in advance by the mainstream media, by the mainstream news and newspapers in London, Scotland, Manchester, or that's just to name a few, and let alone the European wide they did, where members of the public were involved. And if there was ever a risk to national security, surely telling the terrorists in advance of what you're going to do would be it. But to ask about police counter-terrorism in the past, when we are not asking what they did, merely if they did one, is in no way, shape, or form a risk to national security.
No, it's not.
This is what they're trying to hide. If they refuse to answer, or they continue to hide behind these exemptions, we will class it as a refusal and go straight to the commissioner to hold them in contempt. And that leaves them possibly facing criminal charges. The thing is, these people think they are the law. They are not the law. they are there to uphold the law.
Yes.
And the law requires them to answer. So they either answer us or I will hold them in contempt.
Yeah.
And
Too
that's
right.
where this is going at the moment.
Right.
Because there's too many lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too many lies. And I've only listed a few in the book. I hope you enjoyed it, Deb.
I loved it. I could highly recommend. We'll put the link on for that as well.
Yeah.
Highly recommend Caz's book. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Couldn't
I'll
put it
be
down.
reading it.
Unputtable downable is the word.
Made up words again. I'll be reading it. I'll be reading it in the next couple of weeks. So.
Tino wants to know, hello, Caz, any reports of paranormal activity in Smilog Woods? Thanks.
There has been, yes, and there have also been UFOs spotted above Smilog Woods, and quite recently.
Right.
I have a video on my phone of one such UFO that's not been made public.
Yeah.
It seems to be in multiple parts, and it keeps changing shape. And that was directly above Smilog Woods and directly above the crash site. Is that a coincidence?
Maybe it's,
I don't know.
Maybe it's a scout vehicle that's looking for something, or
whatever
surveying the
this
area.
was
Or...
huge.
Yeah.
Don't know where my phone is. I might be able to find it on my phone and show you via the webcam what this thing looks like. You see my phone? My phone. It's on charge a minute. I'll grab it and we can continue the show, but I'll flick through and see if I can find the video.
Yeah.
And I'll show it to you by the webcam.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Rick's wanting to know, so Caz, are the aliens doing these bad things on purpose? Or are they reacting to how we're reacting?
It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if they weren't reacting, if it's them at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We can't really say what it is they're doing necessarily, or what it is that we're doing. If that makes sense. I mean, there's a possibility that we're responsible and not them at all.
Yeah. We don't know what's going on, do we? We don't know where they've been flying around.
I'll see if I can show you this now on my phone. I'll try and get that so that you can see it.
Yeah.
This is over Smilog Woods.
Wow. Wow.
This video has not been made public.
That's amazing.
Okay. There are 2 videos of this.
Yeah.
Whatever this is.
Right, that's better. Yeah, that's no aircraft or helicopter, is it?
No. The same as the pyramid wasn't on the night.
No,
there's no mistaking when you see these things.
Yeah.
Not moving like that.
No. That's amazing.
Look at that. What shape is that?
It's really.
It kept changing shape. I don't know. It kept
That's what I thought.
Parts of it.
Yeah.
Because it looked like it had corners then.
It's stopped now.
Yeah. There's a.
That was weird.
Another one. Another video of the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like. See, to me, the top bit looks like a diamond shape, and the bottom is more square. But then towards the end of the video, it went tubular.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it looked like.
But you see, are they lights on something that we can't see because they're all moving at the same time?
Or are they? Is that a living thing?
That's amazing.
Okay, that's above Smilog Woods.
Wow.
That's just video of one object. that's been seen there. Okay, we have this one as well. Gets in line with the. Hang on, it'll come into shot. Of the same craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just
I don't know what that is.
That's mad.
Okay, and that's just
amazing.
one.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's no mistaking these things when you see
No,
them.
there isn't.
You can see how it's moving. I'm guessing that in the. Is that? Oh no, that's a reflection of your computer screen.
That's amazing.
It's just the way the lights are going in and out underneath it.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're merging with it and then coming back out again.
No, it changing shape. It's going box light, then it's splitting.
Staggering. We're all sat here in our houses and all this could be going on outside.
I'm sleeping outside in the garden tonight.
Yeah, go for it.
For about 5
And
minutes
I've got
before I freeze.
others on my phone from around here. Sort of shine, all different colours.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then they just disappear.
Blink out, yeah.
Yeah.
There is no mistake in that kind of stuff.
That was white, purple, green, and then it just went.
And blue.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that too was filmed by myself and other people just in this area.
Yeah.
So, and that's just a couple that I've got on my phone. I've got more than that on my phone, but I wanted to share that with you because I want people to know this happens around here. This is real.
Yeah.
And the military are aware of it.
Yeah. Well, we've gone over the 2 hours now, but thank you so much for coming on. We've really enjoyed it. And if there's anything you want to put on the Facebook group, just share it.
Yeah.
You want to get any information out there, anything to do with this, just share it. Caz, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
More than,
Well, we have a meeting coming up on the 26th of February this year to mark the 6th-year anniversary. We will be meeting in the Lewis Arms in the village.
Yeah.
At around 7 o'clock-ish. If it's clear, we'll be doing a sky watch here.
Yeah.
If it's not, it'll be an unofficial social gathering to bring people up to date with the things that we can't say on air. So get a bit of inside information. So anybody that is welcome to come along.
Lovely. Well, you can put that ad on the Facebook page. That's great.
Or if there's any information you want to send and you're not sure, you can send it to me or Deb, and then we'll put it on the appropriate page or site. Whether it's a website, description in this video, either of the Facebook groups, whatever it is you want to send to us, just let us know and we'll put it on there for you.
Yeah. Fantastic.
There's so much that I could say, there's so much that's still going on that I can't talk about, unfortunately, on air. But Joe Weeks, thank you very much. We will continue and we will endeavour because the truth will always prevail. I have to believe that.
Yeah.
So once the petition goes out, please keep your eyes open for it. I need 10,000 signatures in 3 months to demand the Ministry of Defence release the footage from the aircraft involved tonight.
Yeah.
And then we can all see nothing happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
It's been brilliant. Absolutely fascinating. That's why I didn't talk much, because I'm just so
fascinated.
Yeah, I am. It's amazing. It's just,
it is.
Wow. Yeah.
I had no idea how big this was or the implications of it. I was sure that somebody would have seen something that I've seen that night.
Yeah.
Find out that nobody had was quite shocking for me.
You were the closest witness, definitely.
And if it wasn't for the way that our military treated them, I would have never come forward in the first place.
No.
But I am compelled to come forward.
And we're
For
glad
you.
you did.
Yeah.
For me, for everyone.
Yeah. I actually thought that we might have got cut partway through this, but we made
Yeah.
it.
We made it through.
I was sure that we would have some technical difficulties. It's happened many times when I've been speaking.
This is one of the only ones where we've not had any glitching, no gremlins, nothing.
Yeah.
It's been plain sailing.
Well, maybe
right
because
through.
they're watching.
Yeah.
You want to know what
Perhaps they didn't
you want to know what you're going to
they're
say
doing.
next. That's where it is.
And on that note,
They
we
want
shall
to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Got that eye on you.
They are keeping their
There.
eye on you. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So massive, massive thank you, Caz, for coming on and sharing this.
Thank you.
Just
Anytime.
been mind blowing, honestly. Really, really
Please
appreciate it.
read the book. Read the book.
Yes,
it's not
read
a
the book
story.
one
It's a
day.
presentation
Oh,
of the
yeah.
evidence.
No,
It's
your
great.
book is next on my list, so it's ready.
Yes.
If we start
I
reading
should do it in
two
a couple
books,
of days.
yeah, if we start reading 2 books, I get confused and end up, God knows,
Bless
don't know
you.
what's going on. Doesn't take a lot. Yeah, so yeah, massive thank you. Thank you everyone for coming in the chat and all your questions.
Yes, thank you.
All the new subscribers, really do appreciate you coming on, and all originals, don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, originals.
Regulars.
We'll go with that. Yeah, so yeah,
Thanks,
it's been
Deb, for
absolutely great.
inviting me.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming. Before we do go, next week is at 8 o'clock again, and we've got Philip and Ronald Kinsella coming on.
We have.
So,
Looking forward to that.
Yes, be another good one.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see you all next week at 8 o'clock.
Have a good
So,
weekend.
yes, have an amazing
Take care.
weekend. And yeah, massive thank you to everyone again, and especially you, Caz. Oh, sorry, before I get told off, Joe Weeks for moderating.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
I never say thank you for
No,
doing
no.
the modding. Oops. And Deb for coming on and joining me on this. So, till next week, see you all then.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Thanks.